you if you can't make it. So I want to introduce you to Tyler.
Hey, thank you very much, Pastor Jesse, and welcome, guys. I'm glad you're here. So as you were saying, so on the website, if they're not able to make it here, you can just Google Ferndale SDA Church. It's like the first option that pops up there in Google. And you click on that, takes you to the website, and across the bar, across the top, you can click on Life Seminar 2022. Click on that, opens up the next window, and then you can look at like registration, live streaming, and if you want to join online in a Zoom chat group after each session, that's where you can join us. So we've got a number of groups that will be here meeting in the church, which I'm going to be talking about. But if you want to join us online in a Zoom chat group, that's where you want to go. And so it's pretty easy to find. Well, hey, it's my honor to welcome you guys here tonight. I'm glad you have time to join us for this Life Seminar. Now, LIFE is an acronym, and it stands for Life Investments for Eternity. My name is Tyler, and I'll be your presenter for this Life Seminar. Now, tonight's going to be a little bit different than the other nights in that tonight we're going to be doing two presentations, but they're both very short. In fact, the second one is shorter than the first one. Going forward, each presentation, if we start at 7, will be done by probably about 7:40, 7:45, and then we'll have time for some discussion. And so tonight, I'm going to kind of walk you through the process to see how this will work, and it's going to be really, really easy. Now, I've lived here in the Pacific Northwest over half my life, and I've been with my wife, LaVon, for 20 plus years. We have 2 kids. We have Nate, who's 9, and Bella, who's 14, and we have a 4-year-old chocolate Labrador named Max. As Pastor Jesse said, I went to a couple of schools. I've got a master's in business. We do have a class coming up on personal finance, and I've also got a master's in marriage and family therapy, and I also have a doctorate in the School of Hard Knocks. Did you know that? Anybody else here been in the School of Hard Knocks? Did you graduate, or are you still... You're still enrolled, huh? I'm still enrolled too. And I also served our country in the U.S. Navy for just about 5 years. I'm also an ordained pastor. Now, it's a pleasure for me to welcome everybody here tonight, and I really want to encourage you to get the absolute most out of each of these presentations. I mean, we're going to be on a journey together. We're going to laugh together. We're going to learn, and I'm going to be using a number of different sources to teach from each night. One of those sources will be the Bible. And so just know that whether you're a person of faith or not, there's a lot that we can learn. And so I want to encourage you to keep coming and to learn what it is that I'll be sharing. Now, tonight around 7:30 is when we'll start our second presentation, and that's on how to make smart decisions. A very important presentation that'll start around 7:30-ish or so. Now, tomorrow morning, I'm going to be speaking here at 11 a.m. They normally have the church service at 11 a.m., Saturday mornings. And so I'd encourage you to come out. In fact, my presentation's entitled The ABCs of Understanding Your Emotions. And what you'll learn tomorrow morning will benefit you probably more than anything else you'll learn in life. Understanding and managing one's emotions is something I think they should be teaching, middle schoolers and high schoolers. We're going to talk about emotional intelligence and how to process thoughts, how they come into our brain, and how to process them, because that will determine our emotional state. And then tomorrow night, I should mention, right after the presentation tomorrow, so we'll start at 11, we'll be done around noon, and then we have an Italian lunch. So if you come out, we want to feed you. All you got to do is bring your appetite. There's going to be lasagna, salad, bread, and chocolate cake or chocolate cheesecake. Strawberry. Oh, Valentine's Day, right? That's why we're going to have that. And then tomorrow night, we're going to do a presentation on how to build and maintain healthy relationships, how to avoid toxic relationships. Very important, how to create those healthy boundaries in our life. Now, we're off on Sunday night because Sunday there's a football game, right? Some of you want to stay home and root for, well, fortunately, it's not the Seahawks, right? So you got to decide who you're going to root for. And then, of course, Monday, there's no presentation. Monday nights, I'm actually down in Federal Way teaching a 9-week course on depression and anxiety. But we'll be back here on Tuesday night to talk about parenting. And this also applies for those who have grandkids or nieces and nephews. And then Wednesday night is 5 principles for winning with money. So we've got some really exciting presentations coming up. I did. Yeah, it was in one of the slides. Oh, yeah, Saturday night. Now, tonight is on how to start living your best life now. Now, when it comes to life, so many people get stuck in the rut of life that they don't really take the time to work on the important areas of their life. You know, one of my consuming passions in life is to help other people really live the optimum and the best life that they can live, while at the same time growing and developing a closer walk and a relationship with God. Now, as we begin, there's something that you need to know. When you choose to improve any area of your life, you choose to improve any major area of your life, there's a chance that you may begin to feel a bit overwhelmed. In fact, as you press on, you may begin to experience emotions like frustration. You may experience emotions like anger. And these emotions, what they can do is they can cause you to begin to doubt yourself, and you hit that wall and you want to give up. Now, I want you to remind yourself that if things were easy, everybody would do it. Did you know that? If mastering and improving the major areas of one life was easy, well, then everybody would do it. Now, the processes that I'm going to be teaching are very easy to understand. In fact, many of you will say, man, I knew that. I can grasp that. So they're easy to understand, but they can sometimes be difficult to do. Now, when you get to that point in your life, in fact, maybe you've been there before. Let me ask you, have you ever had an experience, or have you ever gotten to that point in your life where you tell yourself, never again? Has that happened to you before? Like maybe you made a bad decision. Maybe you did something stupid, right? Or maybe somebody did something to you, and you get to that point where you say, never again, right? I'm never going to experience this again. You know, only when the pain of change, let me repeat that, only when the pain of where you are exceeds the pain of change do people want to make a change in their life. So if you find yourself hitting that wall and you want to quit, I want you to remind yourself of that moment. Remind yourself of that feeling that you had inside when you said to yourself, never again. I never want to experience this again. In other words, you want to use that negative emotion to run from your current situation and into the life that you want to have. You know, there's been a popular book that came out a few years ago. I'm going to try to move this because I'm getting a little static, it sounds like. And the book dealt with, oh, there we go. It's doing that again. See if I can move it out. The book dealt with why. In other words, if you know your why, and it's important for people to know their why in life, because if you know your why, like what is your purpose? What is your why? What is that thing that wakes you up, that motivates you to want to live an exceptional life? If you know your why, you can experience and work through any how. So part of this seminar is for you to understand and define what your why is in your life. Now, for example, my why in my life are my 2 kids, Nate and Bella. They're my why. They're the reason why I want to excel in the major areas of my life. They're the reason why I want to change my family tree. It's my 2 kids. So you have to know your why. It's very, very important. In fact, notice this quote from an unknown author. It says, one day your life will flash before your eyes. Make sure it's worth watching. So let me ask you this question. How many of you would like to experience a happier, more fulfilling life? I think all of us, right? We all want to experience a better life, absolutely. You want to discover what it is you were born to do. I think all of us would say yes to that. You want to know how to live with intentionality and purpose. I think all of us would probably want to do that. Do you want to have better relationships? Do you want to have a healthier marriage? Do you want to create better relationships with your children? Do you want to overcome bitterness and learn to forgive? I'm not sure if there's a way to fix it. Are you guys picking up kind of a weird staticky sound? A little bit there. And do you want to overcome bitterness and learn to forgive? I think all of us would say yes to this. Do you want to master your personal finances? Now, if you said yes to any of these statements, then you're in the right place. Now, if you want to succeed at anything in life, what you have to remember is the past does not matter. What matters is what you're going to do now. You see, you really have three choices. You can stay where you're at, right? You can move backwards, or you can continue to press forward. Know your why, your purpose for fighting to live an exceptional life, and move forward by making positive changes in your life. In fact, notice how the Apostle Paul says it in the book of Philippians. He says, "Brothers, I do not consider that I have made it my own, but one thing I do." Notice, he says, "Forgetting what lies where? Behind, and straining forward to what lies ahead." You know, if you want to know how to get the most out of the seminar, one of the strongest values that anybody can have is humility. And humility in this seminar means that we can all learn from each other. All of us have life experience, this tacit knowledge that we bring to the table and that we can all learn from each other. That's why after each presentation, in your lesson guide, there are going to be a couple of questions. And after each presentation, we're going to take about 10 minutes. And I'm going to invite you kind of in your little bubble where you're at. It's, leave your mask on if you feel safe there. But have a discussion looking at these questions, because what you'll discover is you're going to bring something to the table, and the person sitting next to you will bring some good information to the table as well. Let me ask you, have you ever had somebody tell you in life that you can do better? For example, if you're married, you can do better, right? Now, I don't mean like a better spouse, but I mean you can do better in your marriage, right? Sure. I mean, if you're a parent, you can become a better parent. I'm sure all of us can do better when it comes to our personal finances. And what about our health? What about our relationships? Now, we may be strong in some of these areas, but I'm sure there's at least one or two of these areas that each and every one of us could improve. You see, during this seminar, we're going to talk about things like how to control one's emotions. We're going to talk about how to stop procrastinating and how to stop that self-defeating behavior. One of the most powerful tools in this life seminar is that we are going to incorporate the spiritual aspect as well as the need for community. The reason is because this seminar is about investing in you. This seminar, over the next 10 presentations, it's about how can you become the best version of you that there is. Now, I believe in prayer, and I also believe that, having a relationship with God, along with being a part of a community, are some of the most powerful tools that we can implement to become all that we can be in our life. Now, what you learn each night, when you apply them to the different areas of your life, you're going to see that you are going to be blessed. Because I can tell you from experience, I've been on this journey. I've been on this marriage journey, this relationship journey, this personal finance journey, this emotional health, physical health journey for more than 15 years. And I've read a lot of books on it, and I'm telling you, the principles work. And so I want to encourage you to really focus on taking charge of these areas of your life. I want to encourage you to have the hard conversations with yourself, right? Don't just tell yourself, "Oh, I'm good at all these things. I don't need to improve." No, really have those hard conversations and say, "Okay, what can I learn? What are some of the principles I can apply to my life so that I can excel in these major areas. Because ultimately, it's up to you. It's up to you to create better relationship habits. It's up to you to create better, money habits, marriage, and relationship habits. The Bible tells us in the book of Proverbs, Solomon writes, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." Don't be foolish, right? You're going to learn a lot of good things, a lot of good instruction over the next week. Now, all of us are here today as a result of our upbringing combined with the decisions that we have made. Have you ever met somebody in life that likes to blame everybody else for their problems? I mean, it's easy to do, right? I mean, I can blame the government, right, for my problems, or I can blame my boss, or I can blame my parents, I can blame my family, right? I can say, I came from a crazy family. Oh, by the way, did you know that every family has crazy in it? I mean, they really do think every family has crazy in it, all right? And if you're thinking, not my family does not have any crazy, then guess what? You're the crazy one, right? And just nobody's told you yet. And so every family has crazy in it. And so it's important to understand this. But know this, there is a clear connection with the amount, don't miss this, friends, with the amount of personal responsibility that we accept and how much you succeed in life. Personal responsibility. You see, it's losers that want to blame everybody else for the problems they have, whereas winners look at themselves as the cause. You see, I've discovered in my life, when I stop blaming everybody else for the problems I have, like 90% of my problems magically go away. Did you know that? When I learned in my life that I'm both my problem, but I'm also my solution, right? 90% of my problems cease to exist. Now, most people want to experience success in the major areas of life. Again, these areas we're going to talk about are spirituality, marriage, health, your career, finance, relationships, parenting. But here's what's incredible. Success leaves clues. What does success leave? It leaves clues. In fact, if you have your lesson guide, you got two of them when you came in tonight. And the first one is the one that says number 1 at the very bottom, Introduction to Life. Now, here's where we're going to begin to start filling things in, all right? And so success leaves clues. I want you to notice some of the clues or some of the habits that successful people do. In fact, you could read the top books on success, and you would see there's a lot of overlapping information depending on which book you read. And so I want you to notice here that number 1, and anytime you see a word, highlighted like this, that's the word that you're going to fill in the blank, all right? So the first one we'll do together, very easy. It says, number 1, they live their life with what? Purpose, and they have definite goals. If you want to be successful, think of best practices. What do successful people do? And again, you can read all the business books on successful people out there in life today, and you'll see there's a lot of repeat. And so one of the clues is successful people, they live their life with purpose, and they have definite goals. Notice number 2, and that is they manage what? Time. They manage time well, and they're not afraid to take a calculated risk. You see, we all have 24 hours in a day. Whether you're successful or not, everybody is allotted the same amount of time each day. The question is, what are we going to do with that time, right? The question is, what are we going to do? Number 3 says, they learn from their mistakes and they take what? Personal responsibility. That's a huge one there. I mentioned to you earlier that losers like to blame everybody else, right? It's the darn Democrats, right? It's those dang Republicans, right? It's those people that watch Fox News or MSNBC, or it's my family, or it's, whatever. I mean, you can blame 100 different people. But successful people, rather than blaming, they take personal responsibility. Number 4, they have a positive mental attitude and they take care of their health, right? Now, I don't mean they're just optimistic versus pessimistic, but rather what they are is they are realistic in that they hope for the best, but they always prepare for the worst, all right? They have a positive mental attitude. Number 5, they expand their knowledge by reading and engaging with others. They don't isolate themselves, and they're always reading. And I don't mean they're just reading the latest like fiction book out there, but they're reading books that stimulate the mind, right? They're reading books that expand their knowledge. You look at any successful person out there, whether it's Oprah Winfrey or Bill Gates or you name the person, and they are constant readers, and they're reading to educate themselves. Number 6, they are willing to follow best practices, and they're always willing to learn. They're humble enough to know that they don't have all the answers. They're humble enough to know that they can learn from anybody. They can learn from anybody. And number 7, they have strength and character based on their belief in God. Many of the most successful people have a strong character, and their character is based on strength and a belief in God. So these are some of the characteristics of successful people. Now, I want to share with you some of the characteristics of unsuccessful people. And so you'll notice here on the second page, number 1 is they allow their environment and their circumstances to what? Control them. Maybe you work with somebody like this, right? As soon as something goes haywire, they freak out. Have you met someone like that? They allow their environment and their circumstances to control them. Another characteristic of unsuccessful people is they have no goals and no purpose. They're almost like a river in that they follow the path of least resistance through life. No goals, no purpose. Let me know if I'm going too fast here. Number 3 is rather than take personal responsibility, what do? They blame others, right? Successful people take personal responsibility. They're willing to admit when they're wrong, whereas others that are unsuccessful, they want to blame everybody else for their problems. Number 4, they form their ideas from TV or gossip. Let me tell you, if all of your closest friends know who the person, who the latest person kicked off the island on that reality TV show is, right? If all of your closest friends know who was kicked out of the Big Brother house, another reality TV show, please don't take offense to this, but you're hanging out with the wrong people, all right? I'm just going to let you know right now. Those are the kind of people that form their ideas from TV and gossip. Number 5, unsuccessful people, they lack motivation and they only do enough to get by. How many of you have ever worked with somebody like this, right? They only do enough to keep the boss happy, right? They only do enough to get by. Number 6, they never put forth any effort to improve their situation. I mean, why would I improve my situation when I can blame everybody else? So number 6, you'd want to write in the word effort. And then number 7, they know it all no matter what the facts tell them. Have you ever met someone like that? Yeah, they know it all, right? I mean, no matter what the fact, you could go outside and say, oh, the sky is blue, and they would disagree with you and say, no, it's, orange or pink, assuming the sky actually is blue. And number 8, they make the same mistake over and over again, and they always make excuses. They always complain. So as you look at this list of successful versus unsuccessful people, I want you to have that hard conversation with yourself and be honest with yourself to say, okay, are there things that I'm not doing that I should be doing that are on the list of successful people? And are there things I'm doing that I shouldn't be doing that are on the list of unsuccessful people? And I'm sure all of us at some point in our life, I'll be honest with you, I found myself many times on both lists here, is have those hard conversations, say, what do I need to change, all right? Because ultimately, you look at best practices and you want to say, okay, if somebody else is succeeding in a particular area of life, what are they doing? Because that's what I ought to be doing if I too want to succeed. Let me share with you a story of what I mean. Now, I grew up in a home where my parents never really taught me about personal finance, all right? They never talked about personal finance. They never taught me how to manage money. And so at age 18, I moved out of the house and I joined the Navy. By the time I was 21 years old, I was living in Oak Harbor, and I'm going to be very open and candid with you. I was terrible when it came to managing money. Nobody ever taught me. And of course, being in the military, I had a steady, monthly paycheck that came in, and I could eat at the cafeteria on base, and I lived in, the dormitory there on the base. So I had money coming in, and so I spent it as fast as it came in. Where I know what it's like to walk into a business. Remember, people used to write checks to pay for everything? I know what it's like to walk into a business and actually see one of my checks behind the counter with a note that says, "Don't take checks from this person anymore." Right? I know what it's like to have more month than I have in my checking account. What I mean by that is I would hit the 20th of the month and I was out of money. And I would have like 10 days to go where I couldn't do anything because I was po. You know what po means, right? It's worse than poor. It means you're so poor you can't even afford the R. You know that, right? So I was po. And I was 21 years old. I was about to leave on a 6-month deployment. And I remember walking onto the ship and I had less than $10 to my name. And I remember that feeling I had inside. What I had was a never again moment. I had that thought in my head where it said, "Tyler, you never want to experience what it's like to have less than $10 to your name." I had that "I had it" moment. Have you had those before? Where you're so fed up with the dumb decisions you've made in life, you say, "I've had it," right? I never want to live this way again. And I thought, you know what? I've got to change this. I don't want to live this way. So I began to read. And I began to study. And I began to read business books and finance books and investing books and personal finance books to the point where I went to school and got a master's degree in business. And I said, I'm going to learn to master my personal finances. And then what I discovered when I became a Christian, because I wasn't always going to church, see, when I became a Christian, it amazed me, all of the smart principles I learned about money, guess what? They're in the Bible. They're all in the Bible. And I thought, wait a minute, this is incredible. And that's a whole nother story. I developed this idea of best practices. I heard about this guy named Dave Ramsey, who has a ministry on the radio and TV. And I thought, man, if it worked for him, it's going to work for me. So like 15 years ago, I began to read his books, and I began to apply the principles he taught to my life with the goal of not just changing my life, but I wanted to change my family. I wanted to be the last person in my family tree, on my branch of the tree, to ever have debt. Remember I told you my why? What were my whys? I have 2 of them. They're my kids, Nate and Bella. And I said, I'm going to master this area because I don't ever want my kids to experience what I experienced. And you can use that principle for any area of your life. I just gave you the example when it comes to personal finance. You see, if you don't like an area of your life, well, change it, right? Find somebody who is successful in that area and do what they did. I mean, if you want to have a better marriage, find somebody you know who's got a great marriage, or begin to pick up books on marriage and read them, right? I mean, if you want to improve your relationships, find someone who's great at relationships. Begin to read books on relationships. If you want to be good with money, the same thing. If you want to be healthy, don't take advice from your friend who's like 300 pounds overweight, right? Find somebody who's healthy and say, hey, you look pretty good. What are you doing to stay in good shape? Because I want to apply what you're doing to my life. Again, this is simply called best practices. And so ask yourself this question. If there's one thing in my life I want to change, what is it? What is one thing in your life you want to change, and make that decision to change it? Now, during this seminar, you're going to have moments where you say to yourself, man, I think, Tyler, he's speaking directly to me. Or the person next to you, they may go home with sore ribs because, you keep doing this and pointing and, hitting them in the ribs because they're in agreement with what you're hearing in this seminar is going to be what grandpa and grandma have taught for centuries, all right? It's literally common sense living, but sadly, common sense isn't very, common anymore today. As you come out each night, I just want you to know that we're going to be on a journey together. And the topics that I present, they may touch a challenging area that you're currently facing. There may be a relationship conflict in your life, right? There might be a financial situation, or I should say your finances have seen a better day. During this seminar, know this, you have the power. You can choose to change any area of your life that you want. I love what the Bible says, what Paul says here in Galatians. He says, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. For whatever a man sows, that he will also what? If you sow good decision making, then guess what? You're going to reap the benefits, right? If you sow bad decision making, then guess what? You can then blame everybody else, right? No, you're not only the problem, but remember, you can also be the solution. In other words, if I put good stuff in, good stuff is going to come out. So let's begin right now. Let's decide to pour our lives into the things that really benefit us. To really pour our lives into things like our families, our health, our finances, our relationships, our faith. Now, I want to take a few moments and just talk a little bit here about social media. When it comes to social media, do you realize that the vast majority of what you see is either fake or it's filled with anger? Did you know that? In fact, I read this earlier today and I typed it up. It said, social media is an inch-deep ocean of outrage. In other words, every day Twitter wakes up and it's angry, all right? That's just what Twitter does. It wakes up and it's angry. You see, the point when it comes to social media, and I have to touch on this, is because it's easy to allow other people to dictate how we live our lives. I mean, think about this. Why would we allow somebody else's expectations to dictate what we do? Now, you may be wondering, okay, but who are these other people that you're telling me dictate my life? Well, these other people, we call them the Joneses. Have you ever met the Joneses before? Does anybody here have the last name Jones? Because if you do, I'm not talking specifically about you, all right? But the Joneses is that expression, you've heard it, right? Keeping up with the Joneses, right? Here's something interesting about the Joneses. 30 years ago, heck, 20 years ago, you had to actually live next to the Joneses or see them in person to keep up with them. You'd be at your house and you would look out, your kitchen window and you would see that the Joneses have a new car in their driveway. But today we carry the Joneses with us, right? They're on our phone. You see them when you go to Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or whatever your platform of choice is. But I want you to know something. When it comes to social media, the Joneses are using like 12 filters on Instagram or Facebook because they want to make their posts look better. I mean, we open up these social media platforms and we see people living the lives that we want. Last December, my family and I, we went to Maui for a week, and like the very first day we were there, my kids and I, we chartered a boat and we went out to this like crater where you can go snorkeling there off the coast of Maui. I can't remember the name of it. And while we were on this boat, there's like a couple hundred people on the boat, and we're heading out there. I'll never forget it. There was a couple sitting there, and I couldn't hear what they were saying at first, but by looking at their body language, I could tell they were kind of arguing with each other. And I was just kind of watching them thinking, man, they're on this great boat trip, and they're arguing, they're not getting along. And then all of a sudden, as the boat was going, we passed something, and the wife, I was watching them. I was kind of eavesdropping a little bit to see what they were doing. Well, the wife told her husband, now I could begin to pick up what they were saying, is get your phone out and take a picture of us. So here they're arguing. Then the husband takes the phone out. They smile, take the picture. She says, make sure you tag me on social media. Now think about this. Later that day, one of their friends is going to go on their own account, and they're going to say, oh, look, I don't know their names, John and Barbara, and are in Hawaii. Aren't they lucky? Don't they look so happy there? They don't know what I know, right? They were arguing, and then they go, and then she says, put it on social media. Put it on, tag me on it. You see, the point is this: social media, it's not reality. And I know we know that, but when we go there and we see other people living the life that we want, we see our friends on vacation at the beach, at the park, and well, everything looks so good. I mean, their kids are clean, they're nicely dressed, their kids are so well behaved, and of course, they post that picture with hashtag blessed, right? I see that as I'm sitting at home and I look over and the kitchen sink is piled up with dishes, right? My toddler, I don't have a toddler anymore. They're grown up now, but when I had a toddler, they're running around the house wearing just a diaper. I got laundry overflowing in my basket, right? I mean, there's kids' toys scattered all over the floor. That's reality, right? For most people. I should take a picture of that and go, hashtag blessed, right? Post it on social media and newsflash, everything that you see on social media, it's been filtered and it's capturing a brief second in time. With social media, we're not seeing the full picture, but just a brief moment in someone's life. I mean, so your friend posts a picture of them on a nice vacation. We see that and we're jealous, right? We're envious. But if they're like most Americans, they went into debt to go on that vacation. Not me. I cash flow my vacations, but most Americans, they went into debt to go on that vacation. Nobody ever posts a picture of their credit card statement, right? Hashtag blessed. You know what I'm talking about? Nobody ever does that. I mean, what about the person who posts a picture that they just remodeled their kitchen? They never post a picture of the second mortgage they took out to pay for that remodel. Nobody ever posts a picture of a car sitting in their driveway, with like 250,000 miles on it with, look at what my spouse just bought me, and they take a picture and hashtag blessed. I mean, it's not reality that we're seeing. And so the point I want to make is this. I want to challenge you in your life to put blinders on and to stop looking at what everybody else is doing. Right? This seminar, over this next week, it's about you. It's about your life. It's about your marriage. It's about your relationships, your health. It's about your finances. And it's time that we start putting effort into our lives and stop looking at what everybody else is doing. As you come out each night, I want to encourage you. Each night, you're going to want to fill in these lessons, all right? At some point in this seminar, we've got some follow-up life groups, some small groups that are going to be starting, some in person, some online, and we'll let you know about those later on throughout this week, but you're going to love them. They're really cool. And the reason we're doing these life groups is because, it's important to be a part of community. There's a reason why Alcoholics Anonymous has been so successful for so long, because it really builds itself around community and relationships. Because no one's an island and nobody can do this thing called life all alone. I want to close this first presentation with this quote by Dr. King. He said, if you can't fly, then what? If you can't run, then... If you can't walk, then... But whatever you do, you have to keep moving forward. That's our motto. That's our thesis during this week-long seminar, is keep moving forward. See, friends, I want you to know that mistakes in your life, they don't define you. We've all made mistakes. Mistakes, they don't define you. They refine you. In fact, tell the person next to you, my mistakes refine me. You do that? They refine me, right? They're a learning experience in our life. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to pack your bags. You got your bags ready to go? We're about to go on a trip together, friends. We're about to go on a journey. It's time to start making changes, and that time is now. Now, we're going to take a short break for about 5 to 10 minutes, all right? And then we're going to get into our next presentation. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to notice on your lesson guide. Now, those of you that are watching online, this is a good time if you want to join us on a Zoom chat to go to ferndalesdachurch.org, ferndalesdachurch.org, or just Google Ferndale SDA Church. And on the website, across the top, you want to click on Life Seminar 2022. There's a bunch of things you can click on, and that one's very obvious. And then once you click on that, you want to scroll down, and you'll be able to see a link there for Zoom. My good friend Pastor Jesse's there. So if anybody wants to join us on Zoom, he's going to let you in on Zoom. But I want you to notice that in the life group, there are 3 questions. And so as you feel comfortable, I want you to kind of look around, and maybe in groups of 2 or in groups of 5, but really no more than groups of like 6 or 7. I want you to spend some time with the folks around you just going through those life group questions. There's only 3 of them. In fact, I also put them up on the screen there. Now, I've also given you a homework assignment. Each lesson has a homework assignment. So if you go to the very back page, this is going to be your homework assignment. And that is the book of Proverbs is filled with short, easy to understand truths that span the test of time. Your homework is to begin to read 1 or 2 chapters a day from the book of Proverbs. All right? There's a lot of wisdom in that book, a lot of wisdom. So your homework is to begin to read 1 or 2 chapters from the book of Proverbs. We're going to take about a 5 or 10-minute break. But make sure you spend a few moments with those around you as we get into our life group. So go ahead, turn to the person next to you. I know this first time might feel a little weird, a little awkward, but remember, it's about community. It's knowing that we can all learn from each other. And these first 3 questions are really just icebreakers. That's all they are, it's just icebreakers. So we'll spend about 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll get into our next presentation on how to make smart life choices. Testing, testing. Hey, guys, I put a new mic on. Let's hope this one doesn't make as much of that kind of funky noise. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to get started here in our next one. Our next presentation is a little bit shorter. Open it up here. Oh, there we go. So our next presentation is going to be on how to make smart decisions. There is one key aspect that you're going to learn in this presentation that is worth whatever you paid to get in here tonight, all right? No, it's really worth it. It's so valuable. You're going to absolutely appreciate it. Now, tonight's the only night we're probably going to go a little bit after 8 o'clock. Most other nights, it's going to be, we'd be wrapping up right now, but I had this short one on how to make smart choices, so I just kind of slip it in here on night number 1. So how to make smart decisions. Are you ready? You should have lesson guide number 2 there in front of you. You can kind of see the process of how to fill it in. And every lesson guide has group discussion questions, and every lesson guide also has a homework assignment as well. So make sure you keep these, and so you can reference back to them anytime you want. Now, history is filled with stories of people who have made bad decisions. What about you? How many of you, by a show of hands, have ever made a bad decision? Whoa, your hand went up really fast. Yeah, wow. Well, the most important decision in life is to make the right decision, because everything we do in life is dependent on our decisions. One good decision can equal a lifetime of happiness. One bad decision can equal a lifetime of hell on earth. Now, here's some examples of decisions that people have made down through time. The first one is of French Emperor Napoleon Bonaparte. He decided in 1812 that he was going to invade Russia. Well, if you know anything about history, you know that was a very bad decision on his part. Now, what about the search engine Excite? Some of you are like, There's a search engine Excite. There was at one time. In fact, back in 1999, a long time ago, right? The search engine Excite turned down the opportunity to purchase Google for less than $1 million. We're not interested, they said. How many of you have ever used the search engine Excite? Nobody, huh? Crickets. Well, today Google is valued at over $1 trillion. That was a bad decision for Excite, right? Yeah. And then, of course, another one is that of Blockbuster Video. A number of years ago, there was a new startup called Netflix. Netflix reached out to Blockbuster Video and they said, hey, we'll give you $50 million if you help us launch our new DVD by mail service. Blockbuster said, we're not interested. And today there's only one Blockbuster left in existence. It's in Bend, Oregon. More of a touristy thing than anything else, whereas today Netflix is worth over $100 billion. So you can see, bad decision. And then, of course, there's the 2012 NFL Draft. Did you know that there were 5 quarterbacks drafted before Russell Wilson? Did you know that? You think some of those teams, if they knew what we know now, would love to have gone back in time and picked that 5'10" Russell Wilson as number 1 rather than RG3 or Andrew Luck? You see, people are a product of the decisions that they make. And over 90% of the people that I meet, including myself, have at least one area of their life that is completely messed up. Now, most of the common areas include things like, well, finances, marriage, moral conduct, health, and spiritual life. And 99.9% of the time, they are in their current situation as a result of the decisions that they have made. Now, the Bible tells us in the book of Proverbs, Solomon said, people ruin they want to blame other people. Remember the story of Adam and Eve? Adam and Eve, if you've ever read that story in Genesis, when they ate of the fruit they weren't supposed to, God said, what did you do? Adam says, the woman, right? He gave me the fruit. Again, he wasn't going to take personal responsibility, but rather he was going to blame somebody else. You know, I believe that God has a wonderful plan for each and every single person on planet Earth. In fact, one of my favorite verses is in John 10:10, where Jesus says, I've come that your life is going to be dependent upon the choices that you make. And this life seminar is really all about helping each and every one of us experience and live that abundant life. Now, remember, you change your life when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired. When you have that moment in life where you say, I've had it, right? My moment was when I had less than $10 to my name. I've had it. In fact, every major area of my life, I've experienced, I've had it moment, right? I don't want to live this way. I want to change my life. Again, we can blame, 100 different things for the challenges that we face, but the reality is we are both our biggest problem, but we're also our solution. We are a product, you are a product of the decisions that you have made in your life. And so I want you to do this for me. I want you to ask yourself, kind of a rhetorical question, where do I want my life to be in 1 year? Where do you want your life to be in 1 year? If you're married, what kind of marriage do you want to have in a year? What do you want your finances to look like in 1 year? What about your health? What about your spiritual life? What do you want that to look like in 1 year? Or what about 5 years? Or what about 10 years? Here's an idea. I want to encourage you to write yourself a permission slip that gives you the authority and the permission to make positive changes in their life. You see, here's what's interesting is people will tend to overestimate what they can accomplish in 1 year, but they will underestimate what they can do in 5 or 10 years. You see, in today's fast-paced society, most people are after instant gratification. We make major life decisions like microwave popcorn, right? It's very quick and without much thought. But think about microwave popcorn. How many of you ever eat microwave popcorn? Good to hear. Now, you and I both know that if you leave that popcorn in for 2 seconds too long, right? Not 30 seconds, not 90 seconds, but if you leave it in sometimes for 2 seconds too long, what happens? It gets burned. And when we make decisions rashly, quick, like a microwave oven, if we do that, well, the chances are we can also get burned. You see, we see what we think is a good deal and we move with haste. However, in order to make smart major life decisions, I want you to begin to think more like a crock pot, right? And doesn't food taste better from a crock pot than from a microwave? It does, doesn't it? And it's that slow simmer. And so when it comes to major life decisions, don't think microwave, but rather think crock pot. And the reason is because there can be a tendency to move through the decision-making process too quickly. When we do that, we rely on bad information, we reason from our emotions, and we act on a fleeting impulse. In the real estate industry, they call this regret buyer's remorse. Now, understand that not all decision-making is the same, all right? Choosing what socks you're going to wear are different than, am I going to purchase a new car? No? I mean, when you see a car hit their brakes in front of you, you can't do a crock pot and debate if you're going to slam on your brakes or not, right? So there are some things in life that you have to make a very quick decision, but on the major areas of one's life, think crock pot, allow it to process for a while. Here in a few minutes, I'm actually going to take you through the decision-making process. So, notice this quote from an anonymous person. Your life to be in 1 year? What do you want your life to be like in 5 years? What about 10 years? Now, I'm constantly making decisions that will benefit the future version of Tyler. Now, this might seem kind of new to you, but here's how I want you to begin to think. So I'll use myself as an example. As I ask myself the question, I say, what can I do today that will benefit Tyler in 1 year, 5 year, or 10 years? Does that make sense? Yes or no? That's how my brain works. I'm always thinking that way. Not just 1 year, 10 year, or 5 years, but even tomorrow morning. I mean, it could be 9 o'clock at night and I forgot to take out the garbage and I'm thinking, I'll just do it in the morning. But the way I think is, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to put this off for some future version of myself to deal with. I want to take care of it now. So when I wake up in the morning, future Tyler doesn't have to worry about taking out the garbage. Does that make sense? It might seem kind of crazy, but this is actually a technique that very successful people do. And so I'm always wanting to think, a year from now, what do I want, a year from now, what do I want my marriage to look like, right? A year from now, what kind of health do I want to have? 5 years from now, what do I want my finances to look like? And I actually set goals and I work towards those goals in my life. So I'm always thinking, what can present day version of myself do today that will benefit the future version of me? Does that make sense, yes or no? Now, a lot of us have done this and we didn't even realize it. If you've ever studied for an exam or put yourself through school or had to, work the swing shift or do something, you've already made this decision and you may not realized it or put it in the terms like I just described to you. I'm reminded of some of the greatest decisions that have ever been made. For example, I think of Martin Luther King Jr. He decided that he would fight against hate and segregation. That was an incredible thing to do in his day. I think of Rosa Parks. She made a decision that she would not give up her seat. And in the day in which she lived, that was a major decision that she was doing. Yet, as great as those decisions are, I think the greatest decision that has ever been made by anybody is when they choose to accept Jesus Christ as their Lord and Savior. You see, 2,000 years ago, the Bible says that Jesus made a choice. He didn't have to go to the cross. The Bible says he made a choice. In his prayer, he said, not my will, but what? Thine be done. In other words, Jesus chose to put you before himself. Jesus chose to take what you deserve, and in exchange, he gives us what he deserves, which is eternity in heaven with his Father. So let me take you through some of the major factors that cause us to make poor decisions, all right? So if you're on your lesson guide number 2, how to make smarter life choices, we're going to begin to fill in some of the blanks. Here are some of the major factors that cause us to make poor decisions, and then we'll walk through how to make smart decisions in life. So, number 1, the influence of others. That's how you make dumb decisions, allowing others to influence you. You see, people are directed by their environment and society rather than being directed by their own decisions. So, number 1, the influence of others. Number 2 is time pressure. When we're under the gun, our anxiety rises, and we're much more likely to ignore relevant information. Time pressure. That's why if you've ever gone to buy a car and you're like, I don't really know, I got to think about it, and the car salesman says, hey, look, the deal is only good for today, right? What he's doing is he's playing into you, into your decision making by creating time pressure. It's a technique he's doing. Don't fall for it, right? Trust me, that car will be available for you. Well, I don't know about now with the shortage, but normally that car would be available for you. Number 3, physical comfort. When you're hungry, hot, cold, tired, sick, our decision making is less efficient. Have you ever gone grocery shopping when you're hungry? That's a dangerous thing to do, right? For me, it's also dangerous to go grocery shopping when I'm not hungry. Like if I just ate a big meal, if I go grocery shopping and I don't have a list with me, I don't want to buy anything. I'm not hungry. I don't need food, right? And so, physical comfort, number 3. Number 4, incomplete information. When choices involve several options without much information, the best choice is often impacted. When you don't have enough information. In fact, usually in negotiating, whoever has the most information is the one that wins at negotiations. And so we all know what it's like to make bad decisions. I mean, the world's filled with examples of people who have made really bad decisions. But what about good decisions? What are the steps involved in making good decisions? Well, let's take a look at this. Number 1 is know what you value most in life. This number 1 is something I want you to remember. I mean, if there's anything you remember from tonight, remember this. Number 1, what you value most in life. Knowing what you value most will help you make better choices. So, if I were to ask you to create a list of the things that you value most in life, what would that list look like? Well, I can tell you what my list would be. Number 1 in my life is always going to be God, right? He's number 1 in my life, God. Number 2 is going to be my wife. And I hope on her list, God is number 1 and I'm number 2. That's the pecking order. That's what it should be. So it's God, it's my wife, and then it's my 2 kids. They're usually tied. Sometimes one of them moves ahead of the other, depending on how the other one's acting, right? You have kids, you know what I'm talking about. But it's my kids. After my kids, it's going to be like my extended family. And then it's going to be my friends and relationships. Then it's going to probably be, my job, and then it's going to be my personal finances. It's very important to have a list and to know what you value most. Because what most people discover is at the very end of their life, what they value the most was not tied to their career, and it wasn't tied to their bank account.
What people value most always boils down to, if they're a believer, their relationship with God, but it's always their spouse, their kids, and their extended family. If you want to make smart choices in life, and I'm talking about the major choices, you have to have your values list. So good decision making should be based on what you value. Here's an example. I told you my list was God was number one, number two is my spouse, then my kids, and I should probably throw my health in there too. So I've got family, relationships, health, job, finances would be last, all right? That's in essence my order. Now, let me show you how this works. Let's say I was offered a job. But to do this job, I would have to move to the East Coast. Nothing against the East Coast, but I'd have to move to the East Coast. But they were going to offer me $500,000 a year. I would love to make $500,000 a year. That'd be a wonderful experience. But I'd have to move to the East Coast, but I'd make a lot of money. But I would work for an organization, a company. Let's say they produce a product that goes against my religious conviction. Is this making sense, yes or no? I wouldn't have to pray. I believe in prayer, but in this particular situation, I would not need to pray to say, God, do you want me to take this job or not? And I'm not against prayer, so please don't misunderstand. I'm just showing you here how my value list works. Now, I would love to make $500,000 a year, but because finances are last on my list compared to the other things, I would say no to that job. Because number one on my list is God, and I wouldn't work for a company that created a product that went against my religious convictions. Does that make sense, yes or no? And number two, because my wife is number two, and she's not going to move to the East Coast, because she loves where we live there on the Swinomish Reservation in LaConner, because God is one and my wife is number two. If I make decisions based on my value list, then I'm going to make decisions that take into consideration my relationship with God and my spouse. Does that make sense, yes or no? So this is kind of a little example of what it's like, how you make major life decisions. Whether it's who you're going to marry, right? I mean, if you're going to marry somebody, and let's say you're a believer and that person is not a believer, because God is number one on your list. My question is, if God is number one on your list, then why would you take somebody else and put them above God? Right? And so you have to and you'll meet people all the time, and I'm not knocking anybody here, but we've all met people who have made bad decisions, and the reason is because they made a decision that was not based on their value. Is this making sense, yes or no? Very, very important. All right, let's go on here to, I can give you another example of this, and when it comes to making decisions, is that people will spend their entire life earning money, retiring wealthy, but along the way they lose their family, they lose their health, and they burn all bridges and lose relationships. Again, their money was probably number one on their value list, and that's a very sad thing because, again, when that person's on their deathbed, I've yet to have somebody say, Pastor Tyler, can I see my bank account one more time? Can I see my checking account one more time? Nobody does that. It's always their faith in God or their faith in family, whether you're a believer or not. Now, number two, when you're making decisions, is you want to write out and weigh the pros and cons list. Now, it's important to weigh the value of your pros and cons list based upon what you value most. Again, if you value your health more than making money, hope you value your health more than money, right? Because people will, in order to make a lot of money, they'll, destroy their health. And that's just a terrible thing to do. And so, if you value your health more than money, then you won't make a decision that would jeopardize your health in order to just make more money. If you're making a moral decision, then hold it up against your own personal code of conduct. Now, be sure to get a trusted friend and show your friend your pros and cons list. Now, here's the thing. Don't ask your friend, so what do you think I should do? Here's my pros and cons list. What do you think I should do? Don't ask them that. Instead, say, here's my pros and cons list. Can you think of or can you see anything that I have not yet written down? Right? Because often we'll ask our friends, so what do you think I should do? And, they're your friend and they don't want to be negative. No, I think you should do it, we'll usually say, right? No, say, is there anything I haven't thought of yet that I should add to this pros and cons list? Right? That's the smart question that you want to ask them. Is there anything that I'm overlooking? In fact, the Bible says in the book of Proverbs, without counsel, plans go awry, but in the multitude of what? They are established. And so be sure to avoid the mental bias of only talking with people who are going to tell you what you want to hear. You want wise counsel, talk to multiple people and ask them, is there anything that I'm not seeing? Is there anything that I'm not writing down that you think I should add to my list? Step number 3 is consider the decision in the light of your spiritual priorities. Again, write out your spiritual priorities and ask, how does this decision affect your spiritual walk, as well as the spiritual walk with your family and those close to you? Make sure you take time to read through the book of Proverbs and in the Bible and pray about this decision. Because as you spend time in the book of Proverbs and as you spend time in prayer, this will give time for the Holy Spirit to begin to speak to your heart and bring up things that you haven't even considered. The Bible says in Proverbs 16 verse 9, a man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. God can speak to you in that still small voice, and he'll bring to light things that you haven't even considered. One of my favorite verses is found in the book of Jeremiah. It says, for I know the thoughts that I think towards you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you a future and a hope. Then you will call upon me and go and pray to me, and I will listen to you, and you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. Consider this. I'm going to go back one slide, but it says, for I know the thoughts I think towards you, saith the Lord. Think about that. The God of the Bible thinks about you. Have you ever considered that? The God of heaven, the God of creation, he thinks about you. Every single day, God is thinking about it, and he says, I have thoughts, I have plans for your life, and he says they're not thoughts of evil, but they're only thoughts of good. Step number 4 is wait several days before finalizing your decision. Know that you must allow adequate time for the more important and irreversible decisions. Before you implement a decision, spend time looking over your list of pros and cons. And even if you think you're good at making decisions, you say, I got my gut, and my gut never steers me wrong, right? Well, don't rely on your gut, all right? But make an intelligent choice based upon prayer, your pros and cons list, and what you value most in life. Once you've done all that, number 5 is pull the trigger. Make a decision. Once you've considered what you value most in life, you've weighed the pros and cons, you've sought good counsel, you've prayed over your decision and given it adequate time, now you're ready to make your decision. And always know that information is key. I just had a friend I talked to like a week ago. I can't give you his name. I can't give you any of the details, but his back was up against the wall. And he had an attorney calling him, and that day he had to make a decision. I just happened to call him that day to see how he was doing, and he began to fill me on what's going on. And he says, I don't know what to do. And I said, brother, make a decision based upon what you value most in. Because down the road, when you look back, if you ever regret that decision, you can remind yourself, nope, I made a decision based upon what I valued most in life. And you can live with whatever the results are from that decision. You see, if life boils down to decisions, you may be wondering, why don't people just make good decisions? Have you ever seen somebody make a dumb decision and you ask yourself, what on earth was that person thinking, right? I mean, why don't they just make good decisions? Now, for some, they don't know how or even what it means to make a real decision. And for others, it's been so long since they've had to make a good decision that, well, they just forgot what it's like. It's time for all of us to start working out our decision-making muscle. But again, sadly, many people move through life like a river. What I mean by that is many people go through life and they follow the path of least. If you've ever flown in an airplane and you look down at a river, if you've ever been out there like on the Nooksack River or the Skagit River, you'll see on the map, it's windy like this. And it's because water follows the path of least resistance. And one of the characteristics of unsuccessful people in life is like a river. Sadly, when it comes to their decision making, they always follow the path of least resistance. Again, we're reminded what the Apostle Paul says. He says, "For whatever a man sows, that will he also reap." If you make good decisions, you reap good benefits. If you make bad decisions, you reap bad benefits. And again, we can blame everybody else for our lot in life, but the reality is we are both our problem and we are also the solution. I want to close here tonight before we look at our final questions here, and I want to tell you about the best decision that I ever made. The best decision I ever made in life, number one, was accepting Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior of me. You see, I wasn't always going to church. I wasn't always a practicing Christian. People see me today and I'm up front speaking and I'm usually business casual or wearing a tie. But, there was a time in my life that I was not the person I am now. And when I chose to invite Jesus into my life, I said, "Lord, if I'm going to follow you, I'm going to follow you all the way." That was the best decision I ever made. The second best decision I ever made is when I asked my wife, LaVon, to marry. Guess what? She said yes. Right? And this coming Monday, Valentine's Day, it will mark 23 years ago that I proposed to her. Newlywed. Some of you I'm a newlywed, right? And of course, the third decision was hey, let's have kids, right? Sometimes that's third, sometimes it fluctuates. No, it's always third. We absolutely love. Let me tell you, the best decision that you can ever make is inviting Jesus, making him the support. Now, we've got some questions up on the screen, and I want you to take a look at them. So number one says, write in order what you value most in life and where you want and what you want to improve over the next 12 months. Think about, what do you value most in life? And your list might be similar to mine or to the person next. Number two says, write down some good decisions that you need to make to improve these areas of your life. Maybe share some examples. And number three, are you willing to start reading 1 or 2 chapters per day from the book of Proverbs? Remember, that's your homework assignment. But there's another homework assignment. And that is, let me turn to the page here. It says, mastering your life is not done in an instant. It takes time to create habits that we know will benefit us. Now is the time you're going to start a new daily habit. When you wake up in the morning, the very first thing I want you to do, this is your new habit, is when you wake up, I want you to begin to think about something grateful. Do that? Now, you may have to use the bathroom first, and, that's okay. But when you wake up, start thinking about at least one thing that you're grateful for, and each day, try to think of something new. Now, I realize if you get into this habit, eventually you're going to begin to yourself, and that's okay. But it could be the smallest thing. You could be grateful that the sun's out today. I'm always happy when the sun's out here. It could be how comfortable your pillow is. It could be the fact that you have a job to go to. Not everybody has a job, right? It could be the fact that you've got, maybe a loved one next to you, or you've got kids or a dog, or dare I say a cat. I don't know. Maybe that's on some of your lists. But I want you to start a new habit. Number one, read one chapter a day from the book of Proverbs. Number two, when you wake up, think about something grateful for. Gratitude. Gratitude. Let's take about 5 or 10 minutes and get into our groups. Let's spend a few moments going through questions. But at the end of the day, I want you to know your value. It'll help you make smart choices. Then after about 5 or 10 minutes, I'm going to come up, or Pastor Jesse will come up. We'll have a closing prayer, be dismissed. On your way out, there are some snacks out there. There's some cookies, water, and some nuts out there. And so please help yourself to that on the way. Okay, let's take about 5 or 10 minutes. morning at 11 a.m. I'm hoping through, or you'll release. Oh, and after the 7 p.m. Oh, and then, oh, no, sorry. Remember your Proverbs, wake up.
So that we could gather here with Tyler and absorb his information that he's giving us. But Lord, we ask the Holy Spirit to empower us, Lord, and to lead our lives as we go forward. So thank you, Lord, for blessing us. And we ask for driving mercies as we go home. And Lord, thank you for giving us breath and life. In your name we pray. Amen.